warm welcome because as a board of selectmen, get ready to nod, Adam, we get very excited when people come in person to see what we do. We meet all year long and lots of times we don't see anybody. But Zoom has helped and we get some people that come and it's very positive to see that people are interested, whatever the issue is. So we're very, very grateful that you're here. And so now my commercial is, we have some seats on the board or commission. We have an alternate seat on the senior commission, if anybody's interested. We also have a seat, an alternate position on the conservation commission. So if there's anybody that has an interest in serving that type of thing, that's wonderful. You are all welcome to come to any board or commission and come and say, you know, that you have an interest in whatever they're doing. And you can follow them online because their minutes are posted. We're joined by former selectman Bob Neal. Welcome, sir. At this time, I would announce that one of our members, Bob Moore, has lost a family member yesterday, so he will not be with us this evening. At this time, I would like you to please all rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible. What are we doing?
He's here.
And who else can we have? Do we have Bob Aramita? I mean, Mike Aramita.
I heard him.
Joining us online.
The board clerk has her hand raised.
We have a board clerk that takes our minutes for us. Linda, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
What can we help you with, ma'am?
Can you send around an attendance sheet for me, please?
Sure can.
Thank you.
I'd ask everyone to please silence their phones.
So Dylan had to look at your one today.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything to write on. Joining us also online is Selectman Bob DePietro with hat on, and Mike Aramita has now joined us. So we have 4 out of our 5 members. If you're going to speak, I would ask you to come forward because we use the owl, and the owl sees us. It records, it picks up your voices so that Linda can also take notes, our clerk, and it is also recorded. And how long do we keep the recordings?
Oh, quite a while.
Quite a while. Very good. So what we'll do now, is that we're gonna have 2 sections of public comment. Public comment, you're more than welcome to address the board on an issue. And we ask that you understand that this is not an interaction. It is just meant for you to address the board with your concerns and your thoughts. Because we have a long agenda this evening, I would ask that you keep it at a minimum of 3 minutes. And because we have a significant number of people on one particular issue, we will do that for the second part of public comment. Get an extra pen. Could I hand my pen over?
There you go.
Thank you.
Careful, that one's here.
Okay, got it. So at this time, I would call for public comment on any items that are not related to the stop signs at Hebron and Webster. Do we have somebody who would like to speak on something? Jim, would you like to come forward so that it will be picked up? We do have the competition with the air conditioner. And give you a
I
name,
can talk louder in the air conditioner.
name and address.
My name is Jim Lurch, Brookfield Road, Bolton. Prior to School Road, and I also have property at Brandy Street. Been a resident of town for a long time. very concerned about the condition of the town hall and what's going on with the town hall. It's fragmentation, it's up and down, broken up rooms in a big meeting room. And it really bothers me. I used to have Boy Scout meetings in the big room. Used to have races and tie knots and go back. We had 4 groups and it was really good. And I used to change the flagpole out here when I was a kid in Boy Scouts. But I'm very concerned at the town hall. The situation is not being addressed by the town. And I think the town should make it a point to try to initiate a project to come up with a new town hall. And it hasn't worked at the center of town up there, at the green. But I think right here would be a great place for it. If tearing down the school next door, which I went to. And I think that'd be a beautiful spot for a new town hall. Built as big and long as one, it's got all amenities here. You've got good access, good parking, all kinds of stuff here. So I'm plugging for that again. I'm hoping it's gonna sink in sometime. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim. Is there someone else that would like to speak on an issue not related to the stop sign? One more time, Dorothy, do you have anything to add?
No, just that I do love our little center of town.
Thank
It
you.
is.
Thank you. All right, then we'll move on then to number 3, public comment, and ask that 3 minutes per person. We have had correspondence regarding the stop sign. We have correspondence from the Freemans, from the Sheehan's, and from the Rady's. We've also that are in favor of removal of the 2 directions of the stop sign at Webster Lane. And we have letters not in favor of the removal from Jenny Norris, Palin Laporte, Devin Beauregard, and Rachel Harrison, and Robert Gallet. So that's what we have for correspondence. The board has received those pieces of documentation. So please, if you're going to speak and you have something to add, that would be great. I understand that you may have thought of something else that you'd like to say, but we have, as I said, a very long evening this evening. So if people have not written in and have never spoken before, I'd love to have you go first. Anybody want to stand up and speak? Come on up. Come on up.
Hello, everyone, the board. My name is Harold Wollaston, and this is my wife, Darlene Wollaston. We live in Daria Drive, and we've been there for a little bit over 5 years. One of the reasons that we had moved to this town was its scenery as well as its tranquility. In regards to this sign, one of the things that has affected us as residents of the area, in particular, is the additional noise from the motor vehicles, motorcycles and larger trucks in particular. Since having this sign in place, I've noticed that during my times of studying, I've noticed that the acceleration from certain vehicles during the course of the day. So obviously now we have noise pollution that has now affected my choice of being in that area of Bolton, which I love and we enjoy. I don't want to be part of the problem as far as coming up and putting all the negatives, but I like to be part of it. We like to be part of the solutions where we can come up with some type of compromise, some kind of something in place of that signage. And I thought about, just like we have in the center of town, that digital signage that tells the individual in a digital form their speed. And I thought about that. That may be something in lieu of. I think this acceleration of these vehicles may be in rebellion of having that sign there. So they're showing their outward frustration as having to come to a stop And now they accelerate, spinning tires as a form like they're in disagreement. So obviously that's a concern for us. Safety wise, pulling out of our drive, we don't see really much of a safety as far as traffic going back and forth. I read some of the minutes and some of the in response for some of the other residents, and my biggest concern is there don't seem to be a lot of traffic where one can wait to pull onto Hebron, whether 15 or 30 seconds. So if there's a concern that one has to wait a long time to turn onto Hebron, I don't see that as a big concern. So yeah, we just wanted to voice our opinion as far as our favor to hopefully have that signage removed
Thank
and
you.
hopefully have it digital.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Harold.
thanks for hearing us.
Darlene,
Darlene Wilson.
would you like to add something?
You know, I just in agreement with that. It is very loud. We live one street over from the entrance and you can hear it from our kitchen window inside of the house. You certainly can hear it from outside in the backyard of how loud it is on the street there. And again, safety is a concern of ours too, for all of the residents here. So if, again, there could be some compromise for safety and the noise level there. It certainly was not like that when we moved here a couple of years ago. And as Harold said, we picked Bolton for a purpose. We love it here. It's beautiful. It's such a nice drive in and out from work. We both work in the Hartford area, and so if a compromise can be made, we would appreciate it.
I know it's been 5 years, but welcome to Bolton.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for coming up and speaking at public comment.
You're most welcome.
And letting me
You can
pick on
still
you.
stop by with warm milk and cookies. We still accept them. Ice cream fan.
Ice cream.
Never too late. Thanks, everybody.
Mr. Norris.
Good evening, Jason Norris, 34 Castle Rock Lane. We've been Bolton residents for 16 plus years. I wanted to say, first off, I appreciate all of the perspectives on the stop signs, whether you are for or against keeping them in place. I'm here to support retaining the stop signs in place, particularly the northbound stop sign on Hebron Road. The reasons why are coming from Castle Rock. Almost everywhere we go, I come eastbound on Webster and have to take a left to head northbound on Hebron Road. Hebron Road curves very sharply to the right, and it's very difficult to see very far down from the stop sign on Webster. You can only see about 60 yards, and I use a golf rangefinder to approximate that. It's not a long way to see. It would be difficult for the town to cut down more trees and create a better sight line down to the right, because the edge of Bolton into Hebron is probably only about 30 or 40 feet down there, and I'm not sure we could effectively create a better sight line with the way the road curves. Frankly, the only way we in Bolton can control the speed of the cars coming through from Hebron into Bolton is having that stop sign at when you're coming into Bolton from Hebron, north on Hebron Road. I know there's 14 homes on Castle Rock. I believe there's 5 on Webster that are wholly in Bolton, and maybe some more that are not or partially in Bolton. But there are a number of Bolton residents who this does affect. I would finish with an anecdote. I can remember a number of times, particularly in the morning commute, when we would be trying to bring the kids to school. We would come to the stop sign, do our best to stop, look left, right, left, take a left onto Hebron Road, only to look up in the rearview mirror and see a car probably about 5 feet off our bumper that frankly we couldn't see at all because of the way the road curves. We were doing our best. The stop signs have effectively eliminated that. So I would advocate for leaving them in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Massey, you want to say something?
Certainly. Number one, I'd like to concur with,
Could you just say your name?
oh, sorry, Cliff Massey, 235 Hebron Road, Bolton.
Thank you.
I've been in town a little over 70 years, living on Hebron Road. And I would concur with the things that have been said already. At 235 Hebron Road, we're a half mile from Webster Lane. And I hear trucks, motorcycles, and muscle cars coming away from that stop sign down there. And they are loud, even though I'm very much deaf. I take out hearing aid, they won't bother me at all. But that being said, that stop sign that was just alluded to, the northbound lane, is absolutely a benefit to the people coming out of Webster Lane. I came out of there this morning on my bicycle, and coming out on a bicycle, you don't move very fast. And it's a little bit reassuring to me to know that there's gonna be somebody there to stop instead of running me over. The other two, I don't see a lot of need for them. You have good line of sight in both directions on School Road, and you have great line of sight in both directions on Loomis Road. In addition, I use up my brakes coming down that hill to make the stop, and I use up my gas going up the hill to make that stop. It's not a very green thing. So I'll just add that for the comment, but
Thank you.
it gets multiplied by every car that goes through there. If I look at my little gas gizmo on the dashboard, it says I'm doing 5 miles per gallon going up the hill by Larry Pease's. Normally I'd be doing 50 or 20. When I'm coming down, it's pegged at 30. It'll fall somewhere in between there if I'm not coming from a dead stop. I think that pretty much covers it. I'd add that I have been involved in an accident at School Road from someone going through the stop sign on School Road. This was many years ago. I didn't have a stop, and I was proceeding. It was early in the morning and I wasn't going very fast, and I was able to put my brakes on, but I still broadsided a person coming out of School Road that did not stop. That person's car had enough momentum to do a 360 in the air and land in a snowbank, and it turned my Chevrolet Suburban diesel 180 degrees facing the opposite direction. So it's not a question of not just slowing for a stop sign. Some people just go through there like there was none.
Thank you.
So I have that firsthand experience, and I don't wish it on anyone. But in a lot of ways, I see the stop signs as having emboldened people coming from the side roads. They don't think anybody's gonna be coming, so they can blast through there with impunity and not worry about hitting someone. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cliff. Mr. Hall?
Hey, look, just for the record, that's not me, that's it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excuse me?
I appreciate that.
It's not very much a handover.
No, it's just.
I live at 13 Webster Lane. I've been there almost 40 years. And to concur with things that Cliff said, now you pull out of there, as you said, you pull out, you look in your mirror and somebody's right there. Stop sign's a good idea. I've had situations where I'm coming down Webster Lane and people coming off of Hebron Road into Webster Lane. At the beginning of Webster Lane, it's fairly wide, but it gets real narrow real quick. And I've almost had a head on there because of it. The stop sign slows them down, taking the corner. Also coming out of Webster Lane, I used to do landscaping and stuff like that. I had a twin axle trailer. I'm pulling, you pull, as they said, you look to the left, you look to the right, all of this is, I pull out onto Webster Lane and somebody hit my trailer. Luckily, it was a good trailer, so it didn't do any damage to me. But I concur with the noise, because I hear it too, especially the white truck. But otherwise, I said, I have spoken with Jim Beckwith from Webster Lane, LaFlamme, the new people that moved into Griswold's old place in the back, and LaFlamme, the new people that are in Griswold's old house, and we all concur. Stop sign's a good idea. A couple of the people that I talked to never received the letter. But I figured I was gonna come down here and talk, and before I would use their name, I went to see them first. This is what I want to say. Do you mind if I mention your name, if you concur with me? And they said, no problem.
Thank you.
But I think School Road, Loomis, you're gonna have problem in the wintertime. When people are coming down the hill and if it's a little slippery and they forget where they are. That almost happened to me because I pulled up to that stop sign going north. Buddy of mine came in from 85 and a guy coming down the hill. Well, I was there first, so I got the right of way to go. And it's a good thing I was paying attention because this guy never even touched the brakes, right straight through. I think, no offense, with a little more help, that might can help some of the noise and stuff like that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce. Does anyone else wish to speak that did write in? Do you have anything to add? That,
She's on the voice. She could get in.
can you bring it up?
She's the.
Hi, this is Jamie Freeman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hi, I would like to add a few things. Part of my time, I had saved a video to play, but given the fact there's a passcode that is not available for the Zoom live, I can't play that video, which is 17 seconds. So I would ask that my husband be able to share part of his time to share that with you guys. First up, I want to say that stop signs are not for speed control. Yes, that was in my previous email. However, most of the complaints from Webster and Castle Rock is that they would like it for speed control and that comments are pull out and they are there, which again is regarding speed. However, stop signs are not for speed control by statute. So more concerns, and the video will show you, is that this stop sign creates apprehension. About maybe 50% now stop for it and the other 50% blow through it, which I have video supporting this. So that stop sign actually increased the risk of an accident from someone pulling out on Webster than it did previously. So if you'd like speed control, then I would recommend one of the video digital monitors, as Harold mentioned, up in the center of town in the area, as opposed to a stop sign. I think that solves many issues. Also, I don't know who the last speaker was, but they said they received a letter, and I am curious to the board what letter they are speaking of, as Daria Drive has not received any letters.
Thank you, Jamie. Would you like to show?
Yes, Bill Freeman from Daria Drive. I do have a couple of videos here. I can show you and I can show the other guys. So here's the first video.
Adam?
What this shows is a car that's to be a law enforcement vehicle. Go through the stop sign. It's not intrusive. It is.
So that we just saw a very quick video of a law enforcement vehicle going through the stop sign.
Yes, and we have more of those if you need to see them, including our town troopers.
And there's this one from just the other day. There was a car.
The volume on.
There was a car at the stop sign and then this person was gonna continue.
We just saw a couple of vehicles and the screeching of brakes at the stop sign, it sounds like.
Would you like to see as well?
Yes, the screeching of brakes is from a car that last minute decided to stop for a stop sign, which again is our concern, is that the stop sign is not always stopped for and not always obeyed. So it creates actually more of a risk for people on Webster in trusting that someone's actually going to stop.
Thank you, Jamie, and appreciate your doing the videos. Our apologies for not being able to play it. But we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
We could give you guys copies if you'd like as well.
We can get copies of it. Thank you very much, Bill.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anyone else with the ladies? Would you like to say something, Ms. Carol?
I think I may be the only person that they audio taped, videotaped, but I counted. And I counted 100 cars going through that intersection. People coming from Webster Lane, almost always stop to check that right-hand button. Okay, and so I agree that that's what you've trained yourself to do, and I don't blame you. We're having to check that our left side out of our driveway. We're at 282 Hebron Road, right?
Carol, could you just say your name?
Oh, sorry. Carol Rady, 282 Hebron Road. The stop sign's right in front of our house and right past our driveway. We have about 15 feet between us and the stop sign when we pull out. But if we're going left, we have the same issue you do. We had 18 people turning into Webster Lane from either direction, 4 full stops, 2 drive-throughs, and 12 rolling throughs, all coming from Bolton Center, hitting that stop sign and not stopping at all, just rolling through. And that continued the second time I watched. Because you know, you think you can see, you're not gonna hit anybody, whatever. So that doesn't help. But coming the other way, I didn't have a dog finder, but I measured it out. And I came up with more than 60 yards. But the point is, when the town cut down those weeds a few weeks ago, that helped all of us, as you could see further. The problem we have seen is that the people going straight through, you got we had 60 people going either north or south, and 23 slowed to a medium roll, 26 barely slowed, 4 stopped. And I sat in my house and counted. Then I went outside to videotape some. And what I found is if I was standing out there near that stop sign, guess what people did? They stopped. But then they floorboarded. All right, so there goes the noise. So the reality is that I would be worried if I were you coming from Webster, the unpredictability of whether someone is going to stop or slow down for that time frame. It meant I can't predict what it is, but all I know is my numbers of 100 people were unpredictable of what people were going to do on that stop sign, particularly in front of our house. So we worry that somebody from Webster Lane is going to sit there thinking that they have a better safety margin. They don't, because there's a lot of coming that other direction. So it's just my thought on the safety. The other thing is the noise is, as you all acknowledge, can be really obnoxious. 25 motorcycles on Saturday stopping and going was just fun.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Mr. Ady. Is there something you have to add that was not in the letter that you submitted?
I don't think the letter was okay. I don't remember, but let me tell you.
Can you speak up a little bit and say your name and your
Yes.
address for
Bill
Linda?
Brady, 282 Hebron Road. I sit right, those stop signs are right in front of my house. Unfortunately, my across the street neighbor was in Maine on vacation. Otherwise, he would tell you chapter and verse about also what goes on. I see it all the time. And what I see is, first of all, the right-hand turn into Webster Lane, virtually nobody ever stops for it. They just go. That's my first observation. Did I sit down?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, secondly, I sit in my garage, watch what goes on. Can I tell you what I saw here not long ago? I saw the car slowing down going northbound. But the stops slowed down. And some fool went right out around them and gunned it right around them and went right up the street. Never stopped, cut him right off. This is the foolishness. My observation, the notion of STOP is rarely observed going northbound. People come, they slow down. I would say 1 in 10 stops. The rest of them, they go through it. Some slow down quite substantially, but still roll through. And others I've seen go right through without ever stopping or ever slowing down. So the notion that these stop signs are making people stop in many cases is not what really happens.
Thank you, Bill.
They don't.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anybody online that is with us that would like to speak? Can you tell? Yeah. I see no hands raised. Okay, very good. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask our resident state trooper, Brian Contenta. Would you like to address the board please, on the issue of the stop sign at Webster Lane?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Trooper Brian Contenta. I'm your Bolton resident trooper in town. I work day shift. Been in town for about 10 years. Took a year off last year where I was over the firearm instructor in Simsbury, and I came back almost a year ago. So and it's great to be back in town, and it's a great town to work in. Yeah, this was brought to my attention, the stop sign, probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. And my partner, Jake Mesher, who's the evening shift resident trooper, we took some time and sat down in the Webster Lane. There between 10-15 minutes, we sat there and we observed traffic. And again, obviously your observations and our observations, because you guys live there, you're seeing every single day where it may be more so worse at some parts of the day than the morning, and the afternoon. I sat there during morning traffic in the morning and in the afternoon, but again, it was only once or twice. So we found, Jake and I, we just had a conversation, and from what we saw, again, just what we saw, is that about 50% came to complete stop, 50% rolled through about 5 miles an hour, give or take. That's what we observed. Again, that's just what 10-15 minutes is for observing. One of the things I can say, as far as the history, I just ran it through our computer about 10 minutes ago. With the intersection of Webster and Hebron Road, in the last 10 years, there was one motor vehicle accident, and that was September 1st of 2013. And it was such a minor accident that they didn't even exchange information. They just called it, reported it, and realized, you know what, we're all set, and went the wrong way. I'm hearing more. I wasn't really sure we're going to talk about the Loomis and the School Road stop signs. I can tell you, in the last 13 years since I've been on Troop K, we have had absolute horrible accidents at Loomis and School, serious injury, up to 5 people being injured at once, transported. It was like a trauma scene. I mean, how bad these crashes are at School and Loomis. I feel very strongly about those ones. Since we put those stop signs up at Loomis and School, myself, I do about 100 hours a week, and I have not gone to a crash at Loomis and School that I have not gone to. And I do about 100 hours a week. So I think that's a pretty strong stats that they out there. Webster, again, not a crash, since September 1st, 2013. And that's really what I have for feedback.
Thank you, Trooper.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service to our town.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
At this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Hearing none, we will be moving on to another, number 5, discuss and possibly an act on the removal of the stop sign at Hebron and Webster Lane. At this time, I would say, Kathy Kavanaugh, who is, the administrative assistant at the town hall and is a right and left hand. At this time, I would ask the board's indulgence, because we are a member short, we are not at our full strength. Would you consider moving and tabling this issue until the next meeting, until we can all be present? Adam, would you like to go first? Adam says yes. Michael?
Actually, yeah.
Michael?
Yes.
Bob DePietro says yes. Michael Aramita?
Fine with me.
So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's probably a very big disappointment for us not to act this evening, but due to a member who's had a death in the family, we're going to, I would ask someone to make a motion that we table it until the next meeting.
Make a motion.
But I need a board member to do it. Adam? Adam,
I move that we table this to the next meeting, but I'd like to discuss that briefly.
absolutely. And second,
Second.
Michael seconded. Adam, you have the floor.
I don't feel there's enough information to make a decision on this, because what's missing is some kind of professional evaluation of this intersection and this stop sign and alternate ways to serve both needs. My perception is that the principal objection to the stop sign is the noise. There may be some question about whether it creates a danger that wasn't there before, but I discount that because I work through those possibilities for people coming out of Webster Lane, and there's basically two. They either see the person coming to the stop for the stop sign front heading northbound, and they know they're there. And being a person who's driven in rural roads my entire life, if you see a person coming to a stop sign, you are not allowed to assume they stop. So if you do, you take your life in your hands, and that's on you, not on the stop sign. If you don't see him coming, you've got a 50-50 chance that they actually stop, and probably a better chance that they will slow down enough to see you and avoid you. So I do not see how that increases your risk. I understand the noise issue. I think it's a real one. I think in rural neighborhoods where trucks and motorcycles start up at stop signs, that's obnoxious. There's no way for the police to do anything about that. It's not illegal to gun attention.
And thank you for
So-
your comments.
So I think what we ought to have is either the town engineer or someone else just take a quick look at this intersection and say, is there another way to address the concern? Either, a lighted sign farther down the road toward Hebron or something else.
John?
Without that, I'm not prepared to.
The motion on the floor is to table, which is not debatable.
I'm not debating it. I'm saying table it for what? It's not just table. My motion is not just to table it so
So you said
So that
to the next
attorney-
meeting.
so that the last member of the board can weigh in. My motion is to table it so that we can get other information and help us make
Would
a
you
rational.
restate your motion just to make sure that that's clear for Linda?
I move that we table it and request that the town engineer review this intersection and offer any alternatives to the stop sign, controlling the northbound traffic. Actually, both the traffic, north and south.
Thank you. Can I have is that second is acceptable to that motion? Michael?
Not exactly, because I don't think the town engineer may be the most appropriate person. So I would like someone with traffic experience, whether it's the town engineer or not. I don't want to limit it to just the town engineer, if that's okay with Adam.
I accept that modification.
So he's accepted the modification. Do you now second the motion?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Then, since it's a motion to table with a reason, I would say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that the motion passes 4 with 1 absent. Mr. Moore is absent. Thank you very much. And thank you all. For those of you here, you're more than welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, because we'd love to have you stay. But we will be discussing it hopefully at the next August meeting, which is the first Tuesday in August, 7 o'clock, and it will probably be at Town Hall.
More than likely, but stay tuned.
But stay tuned. If anyone needs a bottle of water, if everyone's all right. Thank you. We're gonna take 2 minutes, break.
She said.
Thank you. Thank you for finding that. No. Pardon? I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
There we go. I would ask, Mr. Contenta, again, thank you, sir, for your service to our town.
Thank you for having me back.
At this time, I would ask that we have a motion to move forward, because we have, members of our staff have had a very long day already from the library. Could we move 10A sub I, up to the, move it up in the agenda to this position on the agenda?
Consent.
They have consent. Thank you, Adam. I've got one yes. Mike Aramita says yes, and Bob Petro says yes also. Thank you very much. And thank you, Adam. At this time, then, Jim, would you like to start the discussion on the library patio?
Sure. So this is not the first time that this has come before the Board of Selectmen. We discussed it at great length when the library successfully received a grant from the Hartford Community for Giving for the installation of this. We had some discussion about it and about its location. Also recently had that conversation with members of the library staff. And we did some investigation. We visited the site with the town engineer, the director of buildings and grounds, our highway foreman, and myself. And we also looked at the site plans of the existing library and the existing septic system. And really, it leaves us one choice for the location of the patio, which is not, you know, from the library's perspective, is not their ideal location. They would have preferred to have it in the front of the building. But based on the location of the septic system, the patio to be constructed will have to go in the rear of the building. One side of the building has air handlers and would certainly be too noisy. The other side of the building would be too wet. And, you know, this does give us the opportunity to make a pretty good connection to the connectivity trail that's back there. It's also not in the ideal configuration that they had, but we actually staked it out this morning. You know, and they've embraced it for what it is and will make it work.
Thank you. At this time, Mrs. Thornton and Ms. Bruns, would you like to add to the conversation?
Absolutely.
Bring your chairs up and have a seat. And just say your name for Linda's benefit.
So Elizabeth Thornton, the director of the library.
And I'm Trish Bruns, and I am a library assistant too at the library.
So basically, we're just here to say thank you. We appreciate the due diligence that Jim and his team has done to investigate all the areas of the library on the property where it could be. I really appreciate the fact that, you know, they really looked hard at that original space. And, you know, makes sense that it doesn't work there for the septic reasons, which isn't really surprising, actually. So going out the back of the library, I was there this morning with you, Jim, and really it looks like a good space. I think you are going to make it the best it can be. I think that hopefully some of the drainage issue and all that will be addressed as well, because as I'm sure everybody on the board knows, that's been not an area that was usable behind the library for all those reasons of the sloping property. And I know that's all going to be taken care of. I think the shape of the patio looks really good. I think we can fit a fair amount of people back there. And so, you know, I just wanted to say thank you to the board for all the support and everything that you've done to make this happen. And we're very excited about the project. And I think it's going to be a wonderful plus for the town and very exciting. It's great that we were able to get the grant thanks to Trish. Trish worked very hard on that. So wanted to make sure she got credit for that. So
May I just add a thank you to the Hartford Foundation for the grant. It was
absolutely.
a very wonderful opportunity for the town to reach out and get some funding, and I believe it was $10,000.
Yes.
Right. And then we will have in-house donations of time and design and.
I will say that the front of the building would have been a lot easier.
Yes.
It's gonna be more work.
Yes.
But they're up to the task. We had a really good meeting this morning. And they're up to the task. They've got some great ideas on, there are some challenges that we have to overcome. But they have some great ideas on how to overcome those challenges. And the team that we have together with our new highway foreman and our buildings and grounds director working together, it's really become a phenomenal team.
I agree. I agree with that. And if there's anything that we can do to help facilitate or any ideas that you want to bounce off us, we're here to be of any assistance and, just really excited about moving forward on it and just thank you again. And
Thank you for your vision because it's
thank you.
Interesting thought and we've seen it through to now the planning phase. Board members, would you like to ask questions? Bob DePietro?
I am personally up the air. I like the idea of the patio, but not having anything to do with seeing or visiting with Jim and Liz and Trish. I feel like I'm not in a good position to give my personal approval at this time. I just don't, I have a similar situation here with my septic and a patio in back of my house. We have a similar situation. We've handled it a different way. We did not pour concrete. We put bluestone. And if it ever has to be moved, we can move it. So I'm just uncertain about, I would have to just abstain from this at this time.
This is an update, right, because we had approved it, the patio the grant had been, after the grant, I believe it had been applied for. And the board had a discussion on it. Bob, it may have been a time when you were unavailable for a board meeting, but we've had discussed it already and the board was very interested in having it in the back at that time. Thank you for your thoughts on the bluestone. I know we have to be very cautious because of handicap access.
Right.
And the ability of having the smoothest possible pavement because of that. But I love bluestone. I'm just saying it'd be very elegant to have. But thank you. Mike Aramita, do you have something to add?
Yes, a couple of questions, probably for
Sure.
Jim is the best. Jim, we're looking towards a community septic system, correct?
Yes.
Which would encompass the library, the existing town hall and everything. Are we in a position that we could wait to put this in, or are we in a time crunch for the grant to potentially put it in the front rather than the back? First question.
It has to be completed by the end of September.
Okay, so we
For
don't have time for that. Okay, number two, would the patio in the back curtail the connection to this community septic system in any way?
No.
That's fine with me then.
Did you have a comment?
Did you have a comment, Trish?
I was just gonna say one thing that the folks at Bolton Greater Together Community Fund had mentioned was if we did need to postpone for any reason that we could apply or request that from them, but it sounds, well, we'll see what everyone thinks.
I think the reality is Kathy's moving us around.
Sorry, because it's really bugging me and I'm on the phone with Sue Ellen and we're like, no way, somebody had to move something.
So the community septic system is probably 2 to 3 years down the road.
Oh.
I don't think we're in a
No.
position to wait that long, and I think the staff at the library would appreciate having the space for outdoor programming sooner, because they have very little programming space. I don't know when the last time you visited the library was, but their space on the interior is very limited. So, you know, they use the lawn now for programs, and if they want to do something out front, they still can use the lawn.
That's right.
But this will, you know, provide us a good surface that, you know, although smooth, will have a broom finish so that it's not too smooth, so it won't be slick. There's a door from the back of the library that'll be direct access to the space. We have the ability to provide power there, so if they need, you know, to run, you know, anything electric, they'll have the ability to do that. So there are some advantages to using this space. You know, I think, you know, with all things considered, it makes the most sense at this point.
Yep, well said.
I would like to add, I'm sorry, Adam.
I just had two questions.
Sure.
One, did the planning and zoning approve the 826?
Let's go into them tomorrow night.
And the second is, in terms of the drainage back there, if there are problems now, are you gonna be able to fix them as part of this?
We are hoping, I don't know if fix would be a strong word. Mitigate would be a yes. But the patio and the use of the patio will not be affected by the drainage issues that already exist. What happens is the property slopes down between the library and the road, but it slopes down and then slopes back up to the road. So there's a dip there, and we think some of the soil that we have to excavate will be able to use to taper that in a little better and resolve some of, at least alleviate some of the drainage issues.
I was just thinking maybe you could use it as a way to create a structure that would collect the water somewhere away from the patio, but maybe that's.
Yeah, the water will go well away from the patio anyway, so I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we don't take questions from the
That's what
audience.
I said, we just.
Sorry. Trish.
Yes, so to echo Liz's comments, thank you all so much. We're really excited to take additional space and really make use of it, make more opportunities to have members of the community not only use it as part of library programming, but also when the library is closed.
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity for the town to have this, and we're so appreciative. The folks at Bolton Greater Together Community Fund, and as you mentioned, the Harper Foundation, very generous to give us $10,000. And we are already brainstorming on how we can make the most of it and really provide some more exciting programs for the community out there.
Absolutely.
So I would like to add it from this member. Thank you for all the efforts that you put forward on this, but also, you know, as you look forward to the future and we have a new drainage, a new septic fields put in, and we don't, that septic system is, then becomes a non-functional,
Obsolete.
maybe obsolete. I don't know if you try the two in together. I don't know how this all works, but we'll look at more options in the future. If you would like to look at more options, because
Thank you.
as things change.
Wonderful. That sounds great.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank
Thank
you for having us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We talked about the 824 referrals. If the board doesn't mind, if there's a consensus, 10A, number 2. While we're on the topic, Jim, do you want to just jump right into that?
So there are two issues that are going to the Planning and Zoning Commission tomorrow evening for 824 referrals. One is the patio at the library, and the other is the temporary building for here at Knott's River. It's later on in the agenda. I talked with staff today. They didn't feel like I needed to attend, nor did the Board of Selectmen, but they will communicate with me if it turns out that the Planning and Zoning Commission has any questions, and I can appear virtually tomorrow evening if that becomes necessary.
Are there questions from the board members? I see Adam diligently reviewing it, so I'm just giving a pause here for a moment.
I did review it. I just, knowing the planning and zoning commission, is that gonna be enough for them? Or are they gonna get this thing idiot?
Well, I provided them with a site plan today of, so they,
For
For their-
both things or just?
for both things. So we were, when I left on vacation, we were still a little bit in flux on the location of the patio at the library. We were still in the midst of investigation on all of the possible locations. So I wasn't able to get that site plan together for them before I left on vacation. But that site plan has been sent to them as a supplemental package. So they have a site plan for both locations, as well as the memo that's in your package.
Great. That
Thank-
should be. That's good.
Thank you. Any recommendations for?
I don't know, but we should
I
just,
just putting you on the spot for a moment of smiles.
they wouldn't appreciate my recommendation.
For those that don't know, he was former chairman of the planning and zoning, so. He certainly understands all of which has just been discussed very deeply. Approval of the minutes, we're gonna move on to number 6. I would take them one at a time. Looking for June 6th, for the regular meeting. I would make a motion to accept and then a second, and then we can discuss any changes.
So,
Adam moves. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you, Michael. Any changes or corrections?
I did.
I hearing none. Hearing none, then I would move the question. All in favor of approving the minutes of June 6th, say aye.
aye.
Aye passes 4 yeses, 1 absent, but
Your
Mr.
board clerk has a question.
Hi, Miss Linda.
I actually sent an amendment to the board members earlier today.
So she did.
Yep.
Is there any, thank you, Linda, for that clarification. Any comments on that? No, thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. Looking at 6B,
So wait a minute. So the June 6th, the 6A minutes, the June 6th minutes should incorporate her correction.
yes, would you like to amend your motion?
I'll make another motion.
Make a second motion, please.
That we amend the approved June 6 minutes to include the board clerk's addition.
Michael, would you like to second that also? And if there's no further comment? Adam, all set?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye passes 4 with 1 absent, Mr. Moore being absent. Minutes for June 20th, special AP meeting. Could I have a motion then to accept the June 20th special AP meeting? Mr. DePietro? Want to make that motion?
No.
No.
I move.
Adam makes the motion. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael. We're six.
I can't remember. Was this one or that one?
This is the 20th. Michael, I'm gonna ask, do you want to second the motion even though you were absent?
Second it without.
I'll second it, but I'm gonna abstain on the vote. That's all.
Thank you, thank you. Bob DePietro,
Yes.
you want to comment, sir?
I had questions for Jim, but he wasn't, he was on vacation. So I can't remember now what the questions even were. So let it go.
You're always welcome to call him. You can put him on speed dial. I give you permission.
Thank you.
All in favor then of approving the minutes of June 20th, please say aye.
I,
Aye, 3 ayes, and Mr. Aramita is an abstention,
Yes.
and 1 absent with Mr. Moore. Thank you. 3 plus 1 plus 1. And now we'll take on July 5th, the special AP meeting.
I'll move we accept.
Second.
Mr. DePietro moves and Mr. Aramita seconds. Any comments on July 5th? Hearing no comments, and I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
I,
and Adam abstains. So we have 3 yeses, with Mr. Teller abstaining and Mr. Moore absent. Thank you. We'll move on to the appointments. We have Michael McDonald, who has put his name in with an interest form for the inland wetlands alternate. The term would run from July 1, 2023 to July 2024. To fill out a term. And then he could, the regular position would be until 2026, but this time he's putting in for the alternate. Is that correct?
I'll move the reappointment.
We'll move the appointment of Michael McDonald,
Second.
second by Mr. Aramita. Thank you. If there are no further questions, all in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
4 yeses and 1 absent. And thank him for stepping forward. We're grateful. Ross Lally, I'd like to have a motion to reappoint him to the inland wetlands.
So moved.
Mike Aramita moves, and I need a second, please.
Second.
Mr. DePietro seconds. Any comments? He's had the chairmanship of the inland wetlands, and we're grateful to have him come back and step into that role if he is so appointed by his board. And thank him for his service to our town also. With no further comments, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4 yeses and 1 absent. Thank you to both of them. Moving on to new business. To act on the insurance fund. If you guys want to take a nap during this, please feel free. Jim, would you like to address the insurance fund, please?
So there is a fund that you've heard about a couple of times at a couple of different meetings. I believe it has approximately $173,000 in it. That is funds that have been collected mostly from town and Board of Education employees during the time which we were self-insured for vision and dental insurance. There has been some conversation at a couple of different board meetings about what should happen with that fund. So recently we convened a meeting of the personnel subcommittee to discuss that fund. And not all members of that committee were able to attend, but those that did attend were in agreement that they felt that these funds should stay intact until such time as there's been a decision that we will continue to stay with the state healthcare plan. We're only in our 2nd year of that plan. And there is no, I guess there's no guarantee that we're not going to go back to a self-funded, vision and dental plan at some point. And if we did that, we have this seed money there to start. If we don't, then we would have to be looking for an ask from Bolton taxpayers to, put money back into that fund to start us off again. Right now, there is an ordinance that governs this fund. And the ordinance indicates that if the board of selectmen are in control of this fund, if the board of selectmen decide to dissolve this fund, the money goes into the general fund.
Questions from the board, Mike Aramita?
Yes, it's not I'll start. For discussion purposes, I'll make a motion that we leave the fund sit as it is.
Do I have a second? Adam will second it for discussion. Thank you. Mike Aramita.
Yeah, Jim makes some very good points about the fund and the fact that if we chose to go back to self-funding, we would have to make seed money available. And that would more than likely come with a tax increase of some sort and could tie our hands depending on the time of the year that we wanted to start. And because insurance doesn't always come due at the same time, and we could be stuck in the middle of a budget year with no way to generate the seed money. So I think I have to agree with the personnel committee that the best thing we can do is let it sit. And if we let it sit for a little while and we choose our, 2-3 years from now, or even a year from now to do something different, then that would be the appropriate time. I think right now we should just let it sit and see how we do with the other funds.
Adam, do you want to make a comment?
Well, I have some questions. First of all,
Sure.
is it invested or earning interest?
Only in that it's, it's part of the money that we have deposited with Chelsea Groton Bank in order to generate interest.
Yeah, we just.
But
So
it's not,
it's not segregated in a separate account. Or is it?
it's in I believe it is, it's in a fund, but all of those monies are counted together.
Okay, because I'm thinking that if it's a hold money for some future purpose, it should have been put into a CD or something with a long-term higher interest rate, or maybe it should be now, something on a 6-month or 1-year CD, because it shouldn't be part of operating funds.
Right, it's not, it's set aside.
I mean, up until now, it's been earning some paltry like 0.5% or 0.1% interest, which to me is a little bit mismanagement of funds, because if we haven't been self-insured for a couple of years now, and we were holding this money indefinitely for some purpose, why wasn't it in a longer term investment? I don't quite understand that. Like something that was going to generate some more, and granted, interest rates have only recently gone up a bit, but I don't understand that, to be honest with you.
Would you like him to move that, ask that question, what's
Well, I'd like
possible?
our finance director to have a plan for this money, if it's going to be sitting there, that it isn't just where the other money that we actually tap all the time and has a lower interest rate. I'd like it to get something better than what we're getting with operating money, because it's not operating money. Once you decide that it's going to be segregated and held for a particular purpose, it should be a, medium-term investment, because I don't see any likelihood that we're going to be self-insured in the next year or two.
Mike Aramita?
I agree completely with Adam that our finance director should have been doing better things with that money if it's sitting in a 0.5% or even a 1% fund, knowing that it's not allocated to anything. And if it's been sitting for 2 years and nothing's been done specifically with it, it's mismanagement on the finance director's part.
I would like to ask, with the board's indulgence, to take that thought process one step further, that at a future board meeting, we look at all the funds that are non-actives and
The cemetery fund, some of the other things that we're sort of holding for particular purposes on a long-term basis, we really ought to be trying to maximize our
all right.
bang for the buck on those.
If I have a little consensus amongst our 4 that are here, we'll ask Jim to go back to Jill, and we'll come back at another board meeting, because I think that's a very good point.
Do you want to go to the board meeting or at a committee level?
I think it probably ought to be at committee level at first.
Yeah,
to
and
generate
then
some
bring it to the
discussion.
board.
I'd like her to explain how she's making decisions on all our funds, to be perfectly honest.
Mike, I don't want to put this on one person. I want to just move forward and figure out what are these funds that we have sitting for long-term purposes, and could we maximize our income on them? I don't know that it's the finance director. I'm just thinking that as a whole, the board is ultimately responsible for managing funds and it falls on us to ask those questions and then get options and pick the best option and put it in place. I'm not particularly interested in pointing fingers at individuals, whether they be employees or otherwise, on something like this, because recognizing that for a long time, money managers were under the expectation that you just didn't get good interest on anything, no matter how long-term it was. It was bizarre, but it was true. So there wasn't a lot of incentive to explore those options. Now that's not so true.
The times have changed, the times have changed, but we also have, had, Jim, please correct me if I'm mistaken, we've had, financial expert look at our funds in the past. And
We have,
counsel.
we have a financial consultant
Thank you.
that is accurate. But that consultant doesn't necessarily work on these issues. They more to help us with, funding and that sort of stuff. Right now, they're working with us to get the short-term loan for the fire truck.
Right.
So maybe we could look at talking to the consultant about these other ideas that Adam and Michael bring forward.
Uh,
Bob,
Pam?
I'm
Oh,
sorry, Bob.
go ahead. Let Bob go first.
Wouldn't the audit pick up this?
All of these funds are audited and they're in your audit reports.
We've received them?
Yes.
That
They,
wasn't that was a statement, sorry. I didn't mean to sound a question.
they're in our audit reports, but I know Adam doesn't want to point fingers at anybody and I don't blame, I'm just hear me out. I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to be, I talk about the finance director coming and explaining, because finance director is the one that the Board of Selectmen look to for advice in these kinds of matters and is the one we pay to give us that advice, and it should be the best advice out there. And if it's not, then we need to know that. And that's why I said I'd like to hear in a committee setting, which is fine, the different accounts that we have and where our money is invested. And I think I didn't know this existed at all. And I think it's time that somebody came before us that we pay and explain these things. And I don't think that's an unreasonable or hostile request. I think if somebody has a job and we pay them, they should advise the board the way they're supposed to. And
thank you.
I'd like to hear it in a committee meeting and all of the funds. I'd like to hear it all. Thank you.
Adam?
I do wonder, I mean, here we are just talking about getting a short-term loan to pay for a fire truck. At the same time as we have money sitting aside that we have no other immediate purpose for. Is there some reason why we're gonna go borrow $600,000 at
So
4 or 5
would
or
like to address
6%?
that. I would like to address
Instead
that.
of using 200,000 or 300,000 we have sitting aside.
So I would like to address that. This is not taxpayer money. This is employee money that has been taken from employees for their insurance, and this fund has grown
Well,
through that.
no, that's not true. I mean,
Excuse
that's
me?
true that it was taken under a contract. A collective bargaining agreement, that it was the employee's contribution to the cost of providing insurance. But the town met its obligation to provide that insurance in full. The whole reason to have self-insurance at the time was because we thought it might be cheaper than buying the insurance. And lo and behold, we saved $173,000 by doing that somehow. That's the town's money by virtue of the fact that you just said to me that there is an ordinance that says the town has control of the money and that it's not true to be given back to the employees. It would be different if there was a collective bargaining agreement that said that the town and the union would agree on what to do with the money if it was left over at the end of the year or the leftover at the end of the contract. But that's not what the collective bargaining agreement said. That's no different than the years where we paid an insurance company and we got the employees to pay their part of the insurance company, it went off to the insurance company. They wouldn't get that money back either if the insurance company saved money. So this is the town's money. It belongs to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Can't be both. Can't be on the one hand, we have control of it and we can do anything we want to with it by ordinance. And on the other hand, it's the employee's money.
Yeah.
There's no,
I see,
neither
I
implied nor actual promise that it's going back to them.
I understand what you're saying about implied or actual, but I also believe that in the spirit of the contribution that was made, it was by the employees for insurance. Because we are still, I think, in the baby steps with the partnership plan and the changes that the state has been talking about, looking at changes, do we stay with it because we agree with their increases? Do we go back to being self-insured? I would like to see this money sit for a 5-year resting period where in which the money can accrue interest, and it is with the intent of remaining in the thought process that it was intended for employee insurance as opposed to a fire truck, which has no leg to this at all.
Pam?
Michael?
Yeah, I agree completely with Adam in this. And if we're looking to borrow money at 4% or 5% or whatever, and our money is earning 1 or 2%, we are nuts not to borrow from ourselves. My wife and I just went through this. We got a car and we had the opportunity to finance it at 5%, and we had money in the bank that was earning 2%. So we were not idiots. We borrowed our own money at a much lower percent. And that's no different than what Adam is recommending here, is borrowing from our own money at a much lower percent than we're apt to pay somebody to borrow their money. And I think it's 100% good use of a fund that is just sitting there. And if it's going to sit there for 5 years, we could finance for 5 years. And you know, I think we're crazy not to use low interest money that we get very little money that we get very little interest on to pay somebody else a higher interest rate. We have enough money in rainy day funds and all kinds of things to probably do this short-term borrowing for the fire truck right from our own coffers. And I think that is something that I'm going to come back to the finance director again. That is something that should be recommended to us by the finance director, as opposed to not being recommended to us. We have enough money to do this at a much lower interest rate. If we're getting 2%, then that's what we should be doing. We should borrow our own money, pay ourselves 2% interest on it, and skip the 5 and 6 and 7 that they're going to look to in short-term borrowing. So I can't say enough about that.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you both have said, but to me, there's a matter of the principle behind it. And I'm going to use the word ethics because it came in the premise that it was for ongoing insurance costs for the employees, and it came from the employees. It did not come from the taxpayers. I understand what Adam is saying.
But we covered their insurance.
Michael, please.
Yep, sorry.
Thank you. If you look at the interest rate that we are now obtaining for that money from Chelsea Bank in total, do you remember what the percentage is now?
It's like 3.5.
3.5.
It's 3.5. It's no longer that extremely low. Do you remember that, Michael, that we worked on that? So we did change that, so it's not at the level that it had been, so that there is that change. The board worked on that. So that's this member's position. Petra, would you like to say something on the issue?
No. I'm comfortable either way, but as I tried to explain this to Adam the other day, I couldn't because I'm missing information that I think Mike is trying to get. So I understand that what both points are from both perspectives. I would tend to agree with Michael and Adam at this point. even though I understand what you were getting at, Pam. I do understand that. I think
So, yes,
I would go ahead with, are we going to need a motion?
so I would ask at this time, would the board consider making a motion to have a review of this pot of money and the other funds in total that are set aside funds, and look at how they are invested first before we make a decision? Or does the board wish to make a motion to take this particular fund and have an action on it?
I'll make a motion that
I'm
the,
sorry, Michael, can you hold 1 minute?
Yep.
Linda, the clerk has her hand up. Linda?
There is already a motion on the table.
What is that?
the
Did
motion
you-
to maintain that fund, I think.
Yes.
Did you make the motion?
Oh, Mike made it for the purposes of discussion and I second.
So you can call the motion if you'd like.
Linda, would you like to repeat the motion, please?
Mike Aramita moved the Board of Selectmen leave the insurance fund intact, and Adam seconded it.
All right, at this time, we have that motion in place. Michael, do you wish to keep the motion in place?
Yeah, it's fine because it's monies we could move if we need to.
Adam, do you wish to can have your second remain?
I'll leave my second.
All right, I'll go one more time around on the discussion. Adam?
My expectation is that this is just a short-term status quo until we actually have that committee meeting, talk to the finance director about options and dispose of this fund in one way or the other. But I do not think that it is wise to just leave it there indefinitely for no stated purpose. I think that's unfair to the taxpayers, and I think it's not what people expect us to do.
Michael?
I agree with Adam completely.
Bob DiPietro?
Yes, maybe we should put a time frame amendment to that motion.
We can make a second motion afterwards. Why don't we address this motion as it stands now? If that's comfortable with the maker of the motion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4 yeses and 1 absent. Bob DiPietro, did you want to make a second motion?
I think Mike wants to speak first.
Michael?
Well, I was going to make a motion that we ask an actual motion that we have the finance director and if necessary, our advisor, both come before the Board of Selectmen in a special subcommittee meeting to explain the location, funding, and tell us what's going on with our money for each fund or pot of money that we have.
I don't believe we need a motion. We could do it by consensus.
I'd rather have it in the form of a motion if you don't mind.
Then can you shorten it and reiterate it so it's clear that that's a motion, Mike? I'm sorry.
Yeah, clear. I would like the finance director and if necessary, our financial advisor to come before a meeting, special subcommittee meeting of the Board of Selectmen to explain where and how our money is invested.
Could I have a second then?
And what monies.
Adam?
I second.
Adam seconds it. Any further discussion, Bob DiPietro? You're nodding your head. No further discussion. Adam, any further discussion? Very good. Then I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have 4 yeses and 1 absent. Thank you. Let's move on to B. Consider an act on the opioid grant. Would you like to address that, Jim?
So we learned about a grant opportunity for an opioid grant for $5,000 from Pam Phillips. She filled out the grant application, came to me the day that it was due, And I told her that I'm sorry that I can't apply for a grant without the knowledge and consent of the Board of Selectmen. She was working on and is hopeful that they would hold the grant period open for us until this meeting. And if they have held the grant period open for us for this meeting, we would be looking to the Board of Selectmen to approve me signing the application for the grant. There are no matching funds required.
I'm sorry, Jim, what is that for?
It would be to help, to help combat opioid abuse in our community.
Is that plural communities? It's a multi-town?
This would be for the town of Bolton. And Pam, this is Pam Phillips, this is her area of expertise. And she indicated that she would help us find those opportunities and ways to use this money that was within the grant guidelines to benefit the Bolton community.
Is there a particular focus of the grant proposal? Is it funding treatment? Is it funding education?
I think, yeah, so we only had an opportunity for a very brief
Narcan.
conversation. Narcan is not something that we lack here in town.
I didn't think so.
It really is about education and prevention.
For the
What
boards,
is fund treatment?
could it fund treatment?
I don't know.
I think that's a valid question. Does the board have an interest in supporting this with the amount of information that we have before us?
Yes.
Adam Keller says yes, Michael says yes, Mr. Spito says yes. So I have a motion then to accept the grant.
Authorize the town administrator to sign a grant application for an opioid grant.
Thank you. A second,
Yes.
Mr. DePietro, second. So we have a motion made before us and seconded. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we have 4 yeses and 1 absent. It's very nice to have a community member take the lead on something like this to bring it forward to our small town. Moving on to C, to consider pay increase for the non-union employees. In your packet, you have a proposal, Jim?
Yeah, except I have a new one that's hot off the press.
Right. This supplement.
And I unfortunately I only have one copy, so I'll have to talk about it. You do have a sheet in there specific from the fire department, from the fire chief, which was based on his proposed budget. You have one in there from the rec department, and you have one in there from the buildings and grounds department. Based on the staffing that they currently have. So those could be acted on independently, and then we could work on this other list that I have here in my hot hands here.
I'll make a motion. We approve those suggested pay raises as presented to us. But I will abstain on the vote.
And we're talking specifically about the fire department, buildings and grounds and recreation at this point, Mike?
Yes.
Jim, can you describe I need a second then? We have a motion on the floor. I need a second. Bob DePietro seconds. Jim, do you want to address the changes
Sure.
or the correction?
So I think with the fire department, the suggested wage increase was 3%. And that recommendation was based on the need for retention. I think that was the biggest thing is, it's not a lot of money. It doesn't add up to a lot at the end of the year. Our volunteers, it costs them to volunteer, right? Every time they get in their vehicles and start them up to respond to a call, that it may be free to the residents of the town of Bolton, but it's not free to the volunteers. And there are other expenses that get incurred. So I think that was the reasoning for the fire department and the fire commission asking for that 3% wage increase for the fire department staff. Much of the staffing with the rec department has to do with wage increases as a reason. Some of it has to do with wage increases as a result of the minimum wage changes, and also as a result of us trying to align ourselves with some of those positions that are in the town of Coventry, so that we can share staff, especially during the summer, between the lake staff. Currently Coventry has one lake that's closed. The other lake is currently open, but there have been opportunities where we've shared staff when our lake has been closed and they're short staff, or their lake has been closed and they're short staff. So that's part of the reason for those wage changes.
Well, I don't know, you're gonna get a headlight credit for $60 an hour. You're lucky you get a headlight credit at all.
We already have that. We already have to, we're fully staffed this year.
I'd like to have a moment of gratitude. And thank you to those that have.
Yeah, we're actually fully staffed in all of our positions this year. Well, at the lake, which is unusual.
It's a big responsibility.
It's a big
It is.
responsibility, very much so. Any further comments on the?
That's really all I have for you, unless you have questions.
Any questions for Jim? Hearing none? Then I will move the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4 yeses and 1 absent. Thank you. Pay increase for non-union employees.
Okay, so your non-union employees include the Board of Selectmen. It includes the Board of Assessment Appeals, registrars, deputy registrars, moderator, van drivers, deputy fire marshal, extra snowplow drivers, library substitutes, library pages, the executive assistant to the town administrator, the administrative assistant in the administrator's office, the recreation director, the town clerk, the tax collector, the chief financial officer, and the building official. And what I will say is that the 2 contracts that were negotiated last year, the wage increase for this year was 2.75%. The supervisors, the union supervisors, have a wage increase contractually this year as of July 1st of 2.25%. That was negotiated. Well, this is the 3rd year of their contract and the 3rd and final year. So that tells us that was negotiated approximately 3 years ago. And, it was a different time. But I give you that information as points of reference when you consider what you might do for this group of people. Now, I know that we had some discussion about, coming forward with the Board of Selectmen to suggest some other wage increases to make sure that we didn't have wage disparity amongst our staff. And we're still working on that information, and we'll bring that to you in the near future. But we'd like to be able to act on something for our staff at this point, so that those who did not receive a raise at the beginning of this fiscal year are getting some wage increase. And you have a hand up from a board member.
Mike Aramita?
Yes, 2 things, Pam. as soon as this is over, I'd like to address an issue that I screwed up on, but I,
On the prior vote where you.
yeah, yes, I wanted to abstain and I screwed.
I would ask the board to hold for one moment, because we don't have a motion on the table, I don't believe. So
No.
Mike, would you like to address that, please?
I don't know exactly how to do it. I'd like to change my vote on the previous motion about the union, non-union employees and where the fire department was involved, because I get some of the money from that. So I just like my vote to be changed from a yes to an abstention, if possible. And
You had mentioned it at the beginning when you made the motion, and
right, and
it was my fault that I rushed through the vote, so.
I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Michael.
In this, I am very sympathetic to the people that Jim just highlighted. When I worked for the town of East Hartford, there were about 12 non-union employees in the town, and they were the department directors. I was one of them. And each year, 3 out of the 5 years, my last 5 years, the mayors thought it was in the best interest to give raises to the 1,000 employees that were unionized. And in a show of, I don't know what, to the taxpayers, they decided that the department directors who were non-union shouldn't get a raise, because that was their way of saying they held the line. They gave 1,000 people raises and 15 didn't get any. And I always thought that was, I'll say it, and you'll probably yell at me for it, but I thought that was pretty chicken shit on their part. I can't say that. I know I can't, but I did. So anyway, I think to give raises to people, everybody in town that's unionized, and hold the people who have not asked to be unionized or who are not in positions to be unionized, to penalize them for the fact that they're not, is shameful. And I think that those people do just as good a job for us as the union people do, maybe even better in some cases. And I think those people deserve what the union people get. And if you don't do this for a certain number of years, you may find them petitioning to be union as well. And that takes all of it out of your hands. So my recommendation, and I put it in the form of a motion, is that we give the people that Jim highlighted the same raise, the 2.75 that was given to the union people who negotiated the last raise.
And you would need a second for that motion. Bob DePietro seconds. Adam Pellet.
I'm gonna ask to divide the question because I think the Board of Selectmen should vote on their case separately.
So the question has been for the motion maker to divide the question.
I have no problem dividing the question, but like I said, if that goes down, it's making a gesture that is, it's a gesture, but it has no real substance to it. For the past 8 years, I believe the Board of Selectmen has voted not to give any raise to themselves. And it's a hollow gesture. What does it come out to? 2% of $1,000 in a year is what, $20? It's not. It's a make-believe gesture, and you're saying we didn't take a raise. I didn't take the $20 that everybody else got, and I just think it's a hollow gesture. And if you'd like to do it separately, I'd still vote to give the 2.75 to the Board of Selectmen, because, like I said, to not is a make-believe whatever. If you'd like me to separate it, I have no problem separating it.
Well, if he's separating the question, then he's separating the question. We can talk about it separately.
Mr. DePietro, do you accept that? And you with your second?
I did not hear what Adam said.
What I said, Bob, is that I do not want the Board of Selectmen pay. We voted on it the same motion as other non-union employees of the town. I'd like those two things to be separated into separate motions, debated and voted on separately. And just for the record, we actually raised our pay, or last year, the Board of Selectmen raised its pay. And I voted no, or I abstained, I can't remember, but I certainly would not have voted to raise my pay during a term on which I was serving. So I think I might find that unacceptable.
I understand. I agree to that.
All right, so.
So shall I
The-
give you the list without the Board of Selectmen, so that we're clear on what we're
Yes,
voting on?
please.
Okay, so Board of Assessment Appeals, registrars, deputy registrars, moderators, election workers, van drivers, the deputy fire marshal, snowplow driver with CDL, library substitute, library page, executive to town administrator, administrative assistant to town administrator, recreation director, town clerk, tax collector, chief financial officer, and building official. Linda, I'll be happy to send you this list.
Any questions for Jim? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 4 yeses and 1 absent. Now we'll move on to the selectman's salary. Mr. Armita,
Yeah, I make a motion that the selectman's salary be raised the same amount as the other non-union employees, 2.75%.
do I have a second? There is no second at this time. I would address the issue of the first selectman's salary, even though there is no motion on the table. It would be about a $400 increase, if that is the question in people's minds. If we're going with a 2.75, and again, that's approximate. It's not something that makes or breaks the first selectman's bank. For most people, at this time, $400 has a much lower value. But I would agree with Michael that I think it's something that the board should address, and we should be addressing it as looking at salaries across the board for if we're going to try and attract candidates. That's another question. So there is no motion on the table.
Pam, could I?
Excuse me, Michael, just 1 minute, please.
Okay.
There is no motion on the table at the present time for the Board of Selectmen's salary. And Adam started to say something.
Well, may I just make a suggestion to Mike as to a different motion?
It's loudly, please.
Mike, may I make a suggestion as to a different motion? Which would
Sure.
be, you move that same motion, but with the increases to take effect in January of 2024.
That I was wondering if we were going to go that route, because what you had said before, that you wouldn't vote for a board that you wouldn't vote for a raise for a board that you're sitting on. That if that happened, then you'd never get a raise, because we'd never vote for ourselves. But yes, I think I could deal with that just as well. If we put it off till after the election, we would be dealing with a different board. Some of us may be on it, some of us maybe not, but it's a different board. And that would be fine with me as a motion.
Before there's a motion placed on the table, just to be clear, the next board would be seated November 15th.
Right. So if we put it off till January 1st, like Adam recommended, can I make a motion or amend
Yes,
my
Michael,
motion?
Yeah, no, this is, it can be a new motion because there was no second.
Okay, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen's pay be raised to 2.75% beginning January 1st of 2024, when the new board is already seated.
Hearing the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
The board does not make a motion or second. Mr. Chair chooses, I can, but I choose.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
Adam, Adam Teller seconds it. Open for discussion. Adam, do you have a comment?
I don't know that it doesn't affect me in any significant way. The only person it significantly affects is the first select person or whoever runs for first select person. I don't know that 2.5% is going to make a difference to whether somebody runs for first select person. And I think that serving as a first selectman is basically your sacrificial lamb to the community. I think you're putting in far more time than you're ever going to be paid under our present structure.
It's about 50 cents an hour.
Right, and I appreciate our present first selectman puts the time in and takes this seriously, and I think she does it out of a labor of love, and I think most of the people who run for first selectman in this town do it out of as a labor of love. So I don't have an objection to increasing that pay. I guess I just don't, for the rest of us, think that it's that big a deal one way or the other. So I would support it, but I support it only because I think the first selectman does deserve a raise and for the position, not necessarily depending, no matter who the incumbent in it is. But again, at the same time, I feel like the rest of us are probably riding along on the coattails.
Thank you. Further comments, Bob DePietro?
Speak for yourself, Adam.
Thank you, Bob.
Enough said.
Mike, Harvey, do you have any further comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I believe the motion is it 2.75?
Yes.
Thank you. As you mentioned, 2.5, understood. Very good. Then I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. And the motion passes 4 and with 1 absent.
Can we go back to the last motion for the staff?
Yes, we'll go back to the non-union
We should,
employees.
we should have had an effective date in our motion.
Could I have a motion, a new motion that will give us an effective date? Jim, do you have a recommendation?
The union staff wages increase were effective July 1st. So I think that it should be an effective date of July 1st for all staff, including the fire department, the buildings and ground staff and the Stephanie's, the recreation, as well as the list that we discussed.
So you're saying retroactive to July?
It should be July 1st.
Mike, do you want to make that motion?
Sure. I'll make that motion that we, the raises that we have already voted to give the non-union personnel that Jim identified, that raise takes effect retroactively to July 1st.
In a second?
Second.
Adam seconds. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 4 yes, 1 absent. Thank you. Moving on then to D, act and consider the kayak rental agreement for Indian Notch Park. Jim?
So we did submit the kayak agreement to, as you know, the town attorney and to the insurance. The insurance company came back with a couple of edits that they asked us to put in. Those edits are now in the agreement. We heard back from them today that those edits are on the second page. They're the last 2 paragraphs just above the signature and date. Starting with, I acknowledge I'm physically able to participate. And then the next paragraph or sentence, to the extent permitted by law, those were the edits that the insurance company asked us to add. And we did hear back from them today that there would be no increase in our insurance rates if we did this just as a summer offer.
I do have a question, if I might start, for the board's indulgence. Jim, do we have an age restriction?
No,
Do we have, for a minor, do we have, a requirement that, parent or guardian, be responsible? for it with a signature?
I believe they have to provide a driver's license or ID.
And would that qualify for a child? Their child or the child that they are guardian for?
Well, they have to sign that they're personally responsible, and it does have a waiver for participant of parent or self. So it does indicate that there has to be a parent or guardian.
Yeah, I don't, that's really what that.
Adam, would you like? Four?
This is meant to be this is meant to be 2 pages, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think that only someone who is 18 years of age or older could sign this document and have it mean anything. So I don't have a problem with somebody who's under 18 using it if their parent is signing. But it doesn't actually say that the person who's renting, the person who actually rents the kayak has to be 18 years old. Period. And it's,
We can certainly add that.
they can let somebody else use it who's younger, but then it's on them.
But I think it needs to be very clear.
Right.
Is a life jacket required?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Shows here in the document. Life jackets provided by the town must be worn from the time the rental period starts until the kayak and equipment are returned to the designated area.
Thank you.
Are the lifeguards going to police that?
To the extent that they can. I mean, if somebody's on the other side of the lake,
Right.
it's pretty difficult, but they're supposed to make sure that they're on before they take off from the beach.
Right. So when they're in view of the
Yes.
lifeguards are good, of course.
Yes, I
Okay, that's all I have.
How many kayaks do we have?
think 3 or 4.
And they've already been purchased?
They were given to us with grant funds from Eastern Highlands Health District.
So they've been purchased. Is this something they've done for other towns?
Yes,
Has it proven to be successful out
yeah,
there?
yes.
It's not, so it's not the first year. for
This
other
is
towns.
not the first year.
It's our.
I know from my time in the town of Wellington, Wellington does it a little differently because they don't have a lake. But they have them in a shed out in back of town hall and people rent them. They take the paddle, the kayak and the life vest and they go off and use them and they bring them back. And that was also through the Eastern Highlands Health District grant program.
And so this is very clear that this is only to be used on Lower Bolton Lake.
Right. Currently, we do not have an agreement that these are used anywhere other than Bolton Lake.
That might be something for the board we might wish to discuss when the lake is closed early spring or in the fall. If at a future time we wish to discuss that, we can put that on an agenda that we could have other rental for.
Although I don't think this agreement expressly says that. We could add that language as well as
At another time.
language. Well, I mean, I would say that we should probably add that language now that it's only to be used at Bolton Lake during the times that the lake is open. Or not. If you don't want to go down that road, we don't have to.
Well,
Well,
it
what
says
time,
it'll be launched off the right of the beach. I
Right.
don't know where else you could use it. Launching it off the beach.
it would, if someone put it in their car to
Yeah.
go down the Willimantic River.
I would hope they would stop somebody from putting it in their car and driving off.
So I meant in the future, they could have an option when, because the lake is closed so much to the good weather time for a
It
kayak.
is something I discussed with the recreation director, but if we can't get this part off the ground, there's no sense in going to the other part.
How late is the park open?
5 o'clock.
So you want everything back by 4 o'clock?
It's gotta be inspected and put away. Yeah,
Very good.
Return no later than 2 hours after.
At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the rental agreement with the addition that no one will be renting a kayak unless they are over 18, although they may allow younger persons to use it
Under their supervision.
under their supervision.
And do I have a second? Mike Aramita seconds. Any further discussion?
Yeah, well, I don't mean to get into, excuse me, minutia here, but the holding of the deposit money, did we have something similar to this at high school 2 years ago, where that became a problem with the auditor? You know, holding the money?
I think that was the money that was collected for pay to play and used to buy uniforms and things like that. It wasn't a deposit. It was more of a fund that was being administered outside the realm of the auditor or the audit of the books.
That was a school activity fund.
Right, that's the name. And it wasn't a deposit. It was a fund that was actually generated and had money in it.
Right. But who holds this deposit?
It'll be held at the lake by the staff until the kayak is returned in good condition, and then they get their money back.
So cash only.
It says $50.
$50 cash, yes.
Okay.
And so we have a motion on the table and a second.
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye. 4 yeses and 1 absent. Ongoing business, Jim, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Mm.
Then we're going to skip down to the cyber upgrade.
Pam?
Which, sir, Michael?
Bob had his hand up.
I just want to ask you, we had a lot of activity yesterday due to the accident on Route 6. I wanted to ask Jim, do we ever get any reimbursement for the costs by the state for accidents on Route 6, which is not a town highway?
Mike can probably answer this better than I can because I haven't been that involved in the fire service in a number of years. But it used to be that the state would reimburse us for activity on a highway. I know in my years of the Ashford Fire Department, we used to get a small amount of money when we responded to I-84. I suspect Bolton did on I-384, but typically it's my understanding that there is no reimbursement for activities that we conduct on state roads or other roads. The only time that we typically see any money is if somebody damages something that is, town property, like guardrails or something like that, or stop signs, and we know who that individual is. Then their insurance company would reimburse the town for the damages to town property. But I don't believe that there's any source of funding for us to collect monies for the effort that we put in. Mike?
Yeah, there are a couple of sources of funding for that. If we use equipment and say our hose gets damaged because there's oil on the road and we have to replace it, there's 2 sources that can be tapped. Number 1 would be the spilling individual's insurance. They're responsible to reimburse the fire department for damage to equipment or lost equipment. And you could even put in for time if you want to get into it. The other one is similar to the way the ambulance works with us. When we take out a piece of equipment and it goes with the patient to the hospital, the ambulance gives us a replacement piece. And that's basically what happens with the cleanup contractor, like ESI was out there today. And anything that would be damaged, ESI would be able to collect from the carrier's insurance company, and they could reimburse us as well. So there are ways for us to get money back for our equipment, for sure. We should never be wanting for a piece of hose or a boom, a boom that we use in the river or something, or hazmat suits, anything that we use. The shipper is ultimately responsible, and we can collect from the cleanup contractor who cleans up from the shipper, or we can collect from the shipper themselves. But there are ways to get the money back.
Thank you.
Bob DePietro, would you like this on a future agenda item, or is that enough of an answer for you?
It's enough for now.
The chief just said that we got, he just texted me, said we got 350 pounds of Speedy Dry, which was used, and booms that were used yesterday. So we've already been reimbursed for what we used yesterday.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thanks to both of you. And it's a good question, but it is now 9 o'clock. And so I'd like to keep going with the agenda. We're down at 10B for the cyber upgrades, Jim.
So we have now migrated from the Bolton.org domain to the Bolton.gov domain. Although you don't currently see that, we've signed our licensing agreement for, so that we're no longer piggybacking off the school's licensing for our software, which is not appropriate. So we have, we're working on that. The cyber upgrades are really well underway. We've transitioned from Correct to Novus, and I have to report that staff are pretty pleased with the change. The service has been phenomenal. We're very pleased that we made the change, and without getting into too much detail, we are much safer today than we were 6 months ago. I'm really very happy that we're making that kind of progress in that area.
Any questions for Jim? Hearing none, then we'll move on. Thank you, Jim. No actions required. The budget report, have any questions on the budget report?
No.
Do I have a motion then to accept the budget report as presented?
So moved.
Mike makes the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Adam seconds. If there are no further questions, I will call a question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4 yeses. And 1 absent. Budget transfers, you have them before you. I'm not going to read them out loud unless there is a question on them coming from the highway department. If they come from the highway department, could I have a motion to accept the 2 budget transfers that are before us?
I'll
move.
There's no number, excuse me, there's no number in the budget transfer.
$700 in the first one.
Oh, okay, I'm
And
sorry.
the second one is $850 for repairs and maintenance.
Right, sorry.
That goes to supplies.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's a late hour. Then I would ask for a motion to accept the 2 budget transfers.
I think I made that.
He did, and I'll second it.
I'm sorry, it's getting late. I apologize. Thank you, Bob and Michael. If there are no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
4 yeses and 1 absent. Thank you. Now moving on to the AP report. Are there any questions for Jim on the AP report?
No, I make a motion, we approve it.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Mike. Bob DePietro seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for Jim? I don't mean to rush people.
You
You're
are.
not? I am though. I know. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I also 4 yeses and 1 absent. Moving on to the selectmen's report. I had a couple of things to report in, and that is, make sure that I have my correct list of this out. On the first of, just to report in on the first, the road closure that you probably got a text on or an e-blast on, text on, was on July 1st, Saturday morning. There was an unidentified white 18-wheeler that traversed up South Road, even though there's a sign that requests them not to. The truck has yet to be identified. We've looked at multiple ways, videos that we've been able to find, but the truck traversed up the road. At the first major curve, it clipped a telephone pole and broke it into 3 pieces and caused the transformer, which was the old-fashioned transformer that was filled with fluid, which is mostly mineral oil with some PCPs in it.
Not all of them have PCBs though.
But this gentleman said this one did. That was with Eversource. And it spilled over into the property across the street and they had to have remediation. So it took quite a bit of time to get this because it was on the holiday weekend and then we had to have the pole replaced and it was on a curve. So we had the road closure. So that was the first one. And you heard about Route 6 already, and that was a diesel spill of 150 gallons. I also had, I've had 4 meetings with the DOT regarding a major plan that they have for the 17 Manchester bridges and the 2, actually 3, but they say 2 bridges in Bolton on 384 to do resurfacing on the top. I've had discussions with them and they will be proceeding with that for positive maintenance to help protect the bridges. I have requested that the DOT look at the painting of the girders underneath, the steel girders, because they look pretty wretched visually, but also I see them as rusting and in preserving taxpayer dollars. They should be sealed up with paint. And so I'm in the middle of talks with them and we have an August discussion that's being scheduled now with one of the highest levels that I've been able to reach so far on getting the undercarriage of these flyover that comes in front of Carlisle Johnson that's going eastbound and the westbound Route 6 that comes behind England's parking lot, back of England's plaza. The Route 6 portion to get those bridges taken care of. So that's a lot of discussion going on. But that's all to fill you up on those. Having nothing else, I turn it over then to number 11 to the administrative officer's report.
So I have I wasn't able to get you a written report. So I have a few notes and a couple of questions. But one of the things that we're looking into right now as staff is the recertification for sustainable CT. This was something that was done under the former administration. We achieved, I think it was bronze level of sustainable CT. And right now we're doing some research to see how much it's going to take to get recertified and, you know, whether or not it has the value of staff's time to get that certification. What it really doesn't, you know, get us free money or grants. What it does is it demonstrates to those who understand what it is that we are using sustainable practices as a town in the things that we do, especially when it comes to things like planning and zoning and things in that realm. One of the things that we have to work on if we are to move forward with this recertification of sustainable CT is a diversity statement. And I know that when the Diversity Commission concluded their work, they had a suggested statement that the Board of Selectmen should consider. And we said we would take that up at a later date. So I just was hoping that the Board of Selectmen might have some guidance as to whether or not they would like us to continue to pursue this. And if so, is a diversity statement something that you think we could put together in some way, shape or fashion, working off the model that was presented to us by the committee, to get something done so that we can include it in our sustainable CT recertification.
Would the board like to think on that for the month and come back to that in August, or would you like to address it this evening?
I think we can address quickly because it's a yes or no question. I think we should pursue recertification as a sustainable community because I think that's an exercise in sort of self-governance that we ought to do. And I think that it ought to include a diversity and equity statement.
Bob DePietro's nodding yes,
Yes.
and Michael Aramita is nodding yes. Would you like to make a motion, Adam?
I move that we support, or that we direct the town administrator to pursue recertification as sustainable CT community, and that include an examination and consideration of diversity and equity statement.
Yes.
In the same.
Because I think it's a component of the certification.
It is.
I'll take it.
So we'll work on something.
Excuse me, I need a second.
Sorry.
Bob DePietro seconds, thank you. But Jim?
We'll work on something and bring something to the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting that you can work on and hopefully adopt.
Thank you. Any further questions for Jim on this issue? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
One absent. And under others.
All the things that we need to check. Steep grant has opened up. Limit on the steep grant is 500,000. Due, I believe, August 9th. Clerk has a room.
Linda?
The audio is breaking up.
The last motion, were you able to hear it?
I heard the motion, but I haven't heard anything since then. It's been all garbled.
There was very limited discussion. And the vote was passed 4 yeses and 1 absent.
was after that.
Was after that, correct?
Steep grant application is open.
Oh,
Can you hear that, Linda?
Yes.
It's a $500,000 grant. And you said August 9th,
August 9th is the due date,
I think it's 18th,
the 18th, it's August.
August, yeah.
So if we're gonna put something together, we've got to get to work on it. I'd be happy to hear from the board outside of the meeting. If you have ideas of things that you'd like to work on. One of the things that I would like to do at some point, and I'm not sure that this year is the year to apply for the steep grant for this purpose, but I'd like us to be able to invest some money in this building that we're using for meeting space. My hope would be at some point, and I did discuss this with an architect at one point, would be to open up the 2 rooms into 1 room and have, movable divider walls, which would give us a very large meeting space, which is something that the town lacks. Bring it up to accessibility standards so that it can be used as a polling place. Because it certainly would be large enough at that point. That is one idea that I've had in the back of my mind for something that we could potentially being applying for steep grants for. We may be able to use steep grants to move forward some of the vision of the folks for the Heritage Farm. Those are other things that potentially could fall into the steep grant. Now, if you remember, the rules for the steep grant is no match is required. Matches are encouraged and can be with in-kind services. So for instance, if we were to say that we wanted to, move forward with some of the vision of the Heritage Farm Commission. Some of those monies that we have expended in the planning phase could be counted, as a in-kind service or a match toward the steep grant. So
We will be having an AP meeting on Tuesday, July 25th. I will not be in attendance, but there will be a board meeting in which this could be discussed further. Would the board like to continue discussion this evening, or would you like to hold that off? Which makes a very tight time frame for the administration to put together the grant. Did you find the grant is extremely complicated grant to put forward? Or is it something that,
last year was the first year I put one together, and I don't remember it as being particularly onerous. If you remember, I applied for a lot of grants last year. I don't remember that one
we received it for the
community
community
sector.
sector?
I don't remember it being particularly onerous. So I think if we were able to make some decisions, by the end of the month, we would have the ability to turn the grant around and get it submitted.
So I have just two thoughts for the board to think about. One is to look at ask for a small grant for lake health, so that we have money to provide treatments for the lake. That's one possibility. And the other possibility would be look at the having and I don't know what the cost would be, but it would be to look for bathrooms for Heritage Farm, which is, I think, a need. And the third possibility would be to have some work done at Herrick Park Pavilion to upgrade it and to do replacements that are needed there to make the building. The last one would be the possibility of we didn't get one for the fields yet, did we? At Herrick Park?
We haven't heard. We've applied, but we haven't heard. That's a federal grant.
Yeah, that's okay. So anyway, those are just some of my thoughts. If the board would like to ruminate on that, I believe that we qualify every year for a steep grant. And there's been a number of years that we didn't apply for anything. And I think the town has needs. And I think we should be looking at using that money, whether it's to look at perhaps roof repair for the fire department. I mean, I want you to be thinking broadly and what you think $500,000 would get us. Unfortunately, it's not much. I did ask the governor to increase it threefold when I met with him. It did not happen in this particular budget cycle, unfortunately, but I said, what you can buy for 500,000 is not very much. Now it's about 1.5 million to get something similar to what we used to be able to get for $500,000 when it was first brought in the year 2000, when I proposed the steep grant.
Didn't we just make a list of projects that we were talking about would apply to the congressional grant opportunities? And what we didn't get there seems to me to be within the scope of this money. So
the only ones that would be within the scope of the money would be the Herrick Park ones.
right,
And we just haven't heard about the dispensation of those grant applications that we applied for.
what about the high school track? It's not within this.
No, that was 2.5 million.
Right. But, I mean, can't you you can look for other funding for the same project, right?
It's not known to be a building grant, put it with other stackable. It's supposed to be a standalone.
It's meant for standalone projects for small towns.
Then, I mean, I agree that the Heritage Farm improvements might be good choices for this. Because they're very, very visible.
Yeah.
Could you bring back a few?
They're part of. it.
Sure, I'll have a conversation with the group and with staff. And we can talk about that at greater length.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a couple of highlights from the month. We had a successful shred day. I hope that all of our members of the Board of Selectmen and public who are on the meeting tonight have seen that the connectivity trail has started. Our staff is doing a phenomenal job. All of our summer staff has been onboarded. I think I would be remiss if I didn't share with the Board of Selectmen that your decision to move the care of the cemeteries under town staff in the direction of the Buildings and Grounds Department. We have gotten so many positive comments that it really just bears mentioning that has turned out to be an extraordinary decision. Also during the month, although I was not present, I did receive an award, a Clifton Clark Award for my years of service and significant contributions to building safety in the state of Connecticut. It's, I wasn't going to include it here, but I was told I had to. So.
Congratulations.
Well,
All right.
deserved.
Congratulations.
I served as a panelist at the CMA annual conference to discuss, sustainable hiring and employment practices during what's happening now. We discussed at great length the consideration that this board went through in considering a 4-day work week for our staff and some of the flexibilities that we've been able to offer them. It was a very good discussion. I also attended the CROG annual meeting. We've completed all of our insurance renewals to date. I was appointed as a member of the board of directors to the Central Connecticut Solid Waste Authority, which Bob, if he doesn't remember, volunteered to join me on.
I remember.
We're working on the next EMPG grant, which does help pay for our emergency management director. We've met with Eversource 2 times during the last month. The last one was for our new emergency management director to learn how to use their online system. And I'd like to report that she has completed all of her required FEMA classes in order to fulfill her role there. Yeah, I'm very, very impressed. It took me a lot longer than it took her to get that done. So I was very impressed that she got all of that done. So that really concludes my report. The other thing I have for you, and I don't know, this came late yesterday. We've been working on a situation where we've had an application for a driveway to extend over a right of way on a town road. And we've denied the application once based on the advice of the town attorney. And I now have a legal opinion because although we denied the application once, it's been reapplied for. And I didn't know if you wanted to add to your agenda potentially to go into executive session to discuss this before I take further action on it.
Tonight or I don't think we can add.
We can't add it.
We can't do it tonight.
We can't do it tonight, right? It would have to be, but that means that they won't get an answer for some time.
Are you denying this in your, is this the zoning enforcement officer?
No, so typically driveway permits are approved at a staff level by the highway form.
Right.
With input from the town engineer when necessary. The town highway foreman was part of the beginning of the discussion, but left before the discussion concluded. We had not hired a new highway foreman. So as the interim highway foreman, if you will, I made the decision based on advice from the town attorney to deny the original application.
So we have a new application before
For the,
with a
for
change.
for the same driveway.
Are there any changes to the?
We now have a legal opinion. There is no change to the ask. And the legal opinion from the town attorney indicates that we should continue on the same track and not approve the request.
What is there to discuss?
Well, when it could potentially be appealed. And I think it's important for the Board of Selectmen to know that there could be litigation if that is chosen.
At this time, I
And
would
that's
ask,
really what it boils down.
at this time, I would ask if the board would consider an ad hoc committee made up of Adam Teller and Mike Aramita to review this. And we could bring the discussion back in an executive session.
I don't think that's an appropriate use of an executive session, nor do I think that we should be, I mean,
I'm happy to make the decision based on the advice of the town attorney.
the staff with the expertise and the advice of the town attorney makes a decision. If and when it's appealed, that's a point at which it's appropriate for the town to direct the strategy or the determination of whether or not to fight that appeal. And that's an appropriate subject for
Executive.
executive session, but the original decision, I mean, we wouldn't have an executive session with the zoning enforcement officer before he denies a permit or grants a permit for that matter. That's the technical staff's job. It's not a management decision. It's a technical decision, right? I mean,
I agree.
I agree too.
But I want to make sure the board is comfortable with me moving forward in that direction.
I mean, I'm always comfortable personally with our staff making an honest decision on the information they have according to the credentials and expertise that they have in the realm where that's been delegated to them or been assigned to them by the town. It's our job to decide later on, sometimes, whether we want to put resources into defending or compromising those decisions. That's a decision for the board in executive session, but I don't think we micromanage these things, because if we did, we'd be doing all of them.
I agree.
I understand what Adam is saying, and I think he makes a valid point. I'd like to ask the other board members. I hear Michael say he agrees, and I see him nodding with Bob DiPietro that he agrees also. So at this time, we are directing through consensus for Jim to continue forward with his action.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I have, unless the board has any questions for me.
Are there any questions for Jim? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Bob DiPietro.
Second.
Hey, I'm having dinner. I make a motion to adjourn. Thank
Bob.
you. Nice seeing you all.
Night, guys.
Good night.